Hello, and welcome back to the European Parliament. We are here with, again, conducting several interviews here at the European Parliament, and it's Meet Your MEP. Our first MEP for this fall is MEP Emer Costello, and she is from Ireland and a member of the Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats here at the European Parliament. Welcome, MEP Costello.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lars. I'm really delighted to be here. We have a very active and a very vibrant deaf community in Dublin, and I've had the honour to work with them in the past, and I'm delighted to be able to be here with you today.
Great. You are a member of the Employment and Social Affairs Committee at the European Parliament. What is the committee planning to do in regards to ensuring that deaf people have equal employment opportunities here in the EU?
Well, the issue of employment opportunities and equality of opportunity for deaf people, and indeed for all people with a disability, is an issue that I have been pursuing on the Employment Committee. It's just interesting, one statistic that I came across was that you're 4 times more likely to be unemployed if you are if you are a deaf person, and that's a really serious situation, and it shows that there is very definite discrimination. Also, I understand that deaf people are very often underemployed in the workplace, and that they maybe take jobs and positions where they can't actually really achieve their true potential. So these are all issues that I have tried to take up in the Employment and Social Affairs Committee, and maybe if I can just outline one or two of the issues that I've raised since I came out here. I might say too that I'm a relatively recent MEP. I just came here in February, so I'm still learning the ropes out here too. But one of the issues that I've taken up is that I have supported the draft directive on discrimination, which I think is very important, and I'm very disappointed that it is still at draft level and that it hasn't really moved through the Council. So it's an issue that I have been pursuing and that I intend to pursue both at European level through the Parliament, and also then in Dublin as well, and with the Irish government. I hope to develop that. In relation to the Employment and Social Affairs Committee, you might be aware that Adam Kosa, who's a member of the Employment and Social Affairs Committee, is actually a deaf person. And we have, I suppose, maybe the advantage of just watching somebody who is deaf working every day, because he's a very active member of our committee. He has 2 very dedicated interpreters who work with him. And that too is a very good, and it's a very important experience that he brings to the table, the issues that deaf people are experiencing. And I know that he tabled a very important report last year, the CUSA report, which actually deals with some of the issues that are facing deaf people, and I think that I would be happy to work with him on the Employment and Social Affairs Committee to advance the recommendations of that report, which are really which are really excellent. So equal opportunities for all has always been my philosophy, why I like being on the Employment and Social Affairs Committee, and why I hope to be able to advance some of these issues into the future.
Great. And as you know, there is the European Disability Forum. They are currently working on a large campaign concerning the freedom of movement of people with disabilities in the EU. Unfortunately, the current situation is that people with disabilities can actually not move freely within the EU. There are many barriers. For example, if they have a new job in another country and they'd like to go ahead and move to that country, unfortunately the support in every country differs greatly, and so they're not able to actually move to another country and get the supports that they need. I'm curious then, how will you make sure that people with disabilities can freely move on an equal basis?
Well, mobility across the European Union is something that is really very important, and indeed mobility and improving mobility and facilitating mobility is very much at the heart of EU policy. It's part of the Charter for Fundamental Rights, and that actually calls for mobility regardless of somebody's ability to be completely mobile or regardless of their disabilities. So it is an issue that does need to be tackled. And just in relation to maybe some of the work that I had done previously as well, I previously worked on European programmes in education, on programmes such as the Erasmus programme and the Leonardo programme, Comenius, where we had grants for schools and we tried to facilitate teachers and students to travel abroad. And one of the points there was that we were very conscious of the fact that people with a disability needed additional supports and therefore they needed to avail of increased grants, and we were very careful to ensure that they did actually get the increased grants so that would allow them to be mobile. So that's with students and with people who are travelling grant aided through the European Union, that can be done, and that is one way of dealing with the issue. In terms of mobility of the workforce though, there are other obstacles to mobility, and I think that it really falls upon the European Union to work towards developing policies that will remove those obstacles to mobility. For example, for deaf people to be mobile, they need interpretation, and they need access, if they're going to work in any country, they need access to interpretation. In Belgium, it's one country that has a really good practice. They allow up to 20% of working hours for signed interpretation for the working person to facilitate them in the workplace. And I believe that that's something that should be introduced throughout the EU, and that would be one very practical example of something that would specifically help deaf people. But I think that there is a lot of work to be done on improving mobility of all workers and improving conditions of mobility for all workers, but particularly workers who have a disability and workers who are deaf. They do need additional supports, and I think that we need to have a look at that and see what policies we can put in place.
Great. Next year, Ireland will be taking the Irish presidency, and I'm wondering what your plans are to have deaf people and sign language on the program. That's my one question. And a second question is how you make sure that the Irish presidency will have deaf people and sign language on the presidency's work program. So what is your plan, and what is the plan for the work program?
Well, in relation to the first question, it's normally standard practice now in Ireland at both political and at major conferences that the speeches and that the conferences are signed, and that is something that has become good practice in Ireland, which is very positive and is very welcome. And I would hope that the Irish presidency will continue that tradition, and that the major conferences and keynote addresses will be interpreted in sign language. Although I still feel sometimes when I go to a political conference and I see the keynote address that is signed in sign language, that it has to be more than that. That's fine in itself, and it's very welcome. But on its own, it's purely tokenistic. And I think that it's very important that we try to engage with deaf people using sign language and other mediums of communication to ensure their active participation in the political process, so that they can really become active citizens in the broadest sense. And I think it is so important for political parties to be able to engage with the deaf people in their own language. And just one initiative that has been taken in Ireland recently is that politicians now can hold clinics, advice centres or meetings with groups of deaf people. They can hire the services of an interpreter and they can claim the expenses back for having the interpreter there. And that's something that I think that I will be encouraging politicians to do, so that they will be engaging with deaf people, because, as I say, it's one thing to have keynote addresses or political speeches signed, but I think we need to get beyond that and we need to get down to real engagement. And that's why I think that it's important to try and see that deaf people feel part of the Irish presidency as much as any of the other Irish citizens do, and that we engage with them fully.
Great, thank you. And maybe, as you know, the European Union of the Deaf, we have our yearly workshop, seminar, symposium and General Assembly. And next year we will be in Dublin. So we invite you to our annual General Assembly, and I hope to see you there. Thank you for this interview, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, and I really look forward to welcoming you to Dublin, and I'm sure that you'll have a wonderful time there.